What is up, my friends, and welcome back to Jones Vibes. Welcome to the holiday season, and also welcome to that time of year where us film critics, we think back on 2024. We think back on the year, all those fond memories, actually in some cases not so fond memories, but mostly fond memories of all the movies that we've seen this year, and then we assess, we think about which ones stand above the rest. 2024 in particular was a year that I was not that excited about going in. I wasn't too stoked about a lot of the movies that were coming out, but man, did it deliver with some surprises, and so that's what I'm doing today. Today, I wanted to give you guys my top 10 movies of 2024. It's going to be all genres, and also this is going to serve as a recommendation list if you haven't seen any of these titles. As always, make sure to leave me all of your thoughts on this list down in the comments. I'd also love to hear your guys' top 10 list. So spread some holiday cheer by leaving it down here. That was dumb, wasn't it? But I'm going to start this thing off at number 10. Number 10, I'm putting Wicked. And a lot of this stuff that I'm going to say about these films is stuff that I've already kind of covered in my review, but if you didn't see my review, like, Wicked is something that I wanted to see on Broadway. I've never seen the stage show. I've always wanted to, and so I was actually a little bummed out just having to go to the theater to witness this thing for the first time, and I really wasn't looking too forward to it. I'm not the biggest Ariana Grande fan. I didn't even know who Cynthia Erivo was before the movie, but then I sat down and it was just one of the most magical experiences I could ever describe. I'm sure a lot of people now can understand because a lot of people have seen that movie, but it's insane. I can't wait for part 2. I think the things that stuck out the most for me was just the world that was created in that film. You really felt like you were existing in this other place, this Oz, you know, somewhere that I just don't feel like many films are able to capture, especially in the fantasy genre. It was a place that you wanted to be, and it was a place that you felt like you belonged for a moment in time while you were watching it. Also, just the costumes, the sets, the performances, and then the music, the singing. It was outstanding, and I was pleasantly surprised with that film. So yeah, Wicked is my number 10. Moving on to number 9. This is a film that I actually saw at Fantastic Fest. This is a film festival in Austin, Texas. It's a very niche film festival, so there's a lot of horror, there's a lot of drama, but just a lot of really fun things that you wouldn't think of. I never probably would have watched this film. I don't know if I would have watched it this year, but it's called A Different Man. It did not have the biggest release in the world, but I highly suggest trying to track it down and watch it. This is starring Sebastian Stan, directed by Aaron Schimberg, and it's about this guy suffering with neurofibromatosis. Basically, that manifests in like facial disfigurement, and this is something that one of the main actors in the film suffers from. And so it's this really, really interesting story of jealousy and gaining the world just to kind of see how it feels and realizing maybe it's not all that it's cracked up to be. It's a really strange story, but Sebastian Stan delivers a knockout performance in it, and again, I highly recommend it. It's a bit scary at times, but it's also more of a intriguing and enjoyable ride. Once you get past some of the scary stuff, it just becomes this, well, I'll let you watch it if you haven't, but yeah, A Different Man, number 9. But on to number 8, and this is a film from Richard Linklater, one of my favorite directors, mainly because he directed Dazed and Confused. I live in Austin now, and so it has a special place in my heart. I've always loved that movie. And then you have Richard Linklater, a native to Austin. I got to see this movie in Austin, and so it was a really fun time. But this movie is starring Glenn Powell, and it is called Hitman. I'm sure a lot of you probably saw this on Netflix. It did have a bit of a release in theaters, but I just loved Glenn Powell in this film. He brought everything that you want a superstar to bring, and it completely changed the way that I thought about Glenn Powell. I saw him in Top Gun Maverick. I liked him in Top Gun Maverick, but this was the film that solidified it for me. Everything that he does, from changing his appearance, he has to put on these disguises throughout the entire thing. He plays all of these wacky characters that are so just like bonkers and weird, and a lot of it could easily throw this movie off and make it not work. But when you have Adria Arjona, a phenomenal leading lady across from him, and then a lot of heart and soul put into this thing, it truly was one of the biggest surprises for me of the year, and it's definitely one of the most rewatchable movies that I saw this year. I've already rewatched it twice, and that honestly kind of helps when I'm making this list. Like, what's a movie that I think I'm going to be able to rewatch down the line? It kind of has a little bit more sway for me when thinking about this. So yeah, Hitman, phenomenal movie. Moving on. At number 7, this is a film directed by Sean Baker. It is Anora. It's starring Mikey Madison. rising star Mikey Madison, I should say, and this was one of those performances of the year that absolutely knocked my socks off. Mikey Madison is incredible in this. I haven't been shy about saying that I think that she should win Best Actress because it is that caliber of a performance. She really holds this movie down. The entire thing centers around her. And this film is funny. It's way funnier than you would expect, but it also has those gut punch moments. It has a lot of emotion, and I just thought it was very, very creative and very well done. Mikey Madison, again, she's a star, man. Just an amazing movie. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. But moving on to number 6, this is a film directed by Greg Quidar, starring Coleman Domingo. This is a film called Sing Sing, and I'm kind of keeping with the theme here for number 6 of awards talk. I think Coleman Domingo should win Best Actor for this performance, and that's purely why it made my list. It's one of the best performances that I've seen in quite some time. The film follows a theater program in a correctional facility and just like the ins and outs of prison life and what that looks like and what that feels like, and trying to find happiness in the small things, but also just taking you and forcing you to witness some of the dark things that these guys see. This is a true story. A lot of the actors were actually people that were in this correctional facility and were members of this, and so it definitely draws on the heartstrings. Also, Coleman Domingo, apparently he had like 20 days to shoot this. Like, he was only on set, I forget exactly how, but it was like 15 to 20 days that he was there, and he just put forward a masterclass performance. It's phenomenal. So if you get a chance to watch Sing Sing, I highly suggest it. And if you're kind of the type of person that's interested in the awards type films, this is a good one for you. But on to number 5, and this is when it starts getting a little bit blurry because I feel like any one of these top 5 could serve as my number 1, but you know, there's a reason why I have them in the particular order that I do. Number 5, I'm putting Saturday Night. This is a film by Jason Reitman, Ghostbusters Afterlife director. He's the son of Ivan Reitman, Ghostbusters creator, friends with a lot of SNL dudes, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and you can tell this is a guy that just has a lot of passion for Saturday Night Live, a lot of passion for SNL, and that sways me a little bit because I grew up watching the best of 25 years Saturday Night Live. I had the Chris Farley, I had all the best ofs, you know, Mike Myers, Chris Rock, just all of them, and we would watch them on repeat, my brother and I. And so getting to witness the 90 minutes leading up to the first episode of SNL, and you have characters like Gilda Radner, John Belushi, Chevy Chase, it was one of the most beautiful things. I actually shed a tear during this movie. And again, I'm sure a lot of people out there would watch this movie and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. If they don't have that attachment to people like John Belushi or Gilda Radner, who passed way too soon. It's just a really special thing. It's filmed in the style of almost a oneer. And so you're just going and going and going until this thing ends. Obviously, there are cuts. It wasn't a complete oneer, but I think what Jason was able to achieve here is something really beautiful, and I think SNL fans can really appreciate it. I've seen a lot of love, but also just as a film in general. If you don't know Saturday Night Live and you watch this thing, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it just because it's a really cool thing to see, like, the origins of live television sketch comedy. It's such a cool and out there premise for a movie, and they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. But moving on to number 4, and I guess the question is, have you ever dreamed of a better life? Then you should take The Substance. Number 4 is The Substance, starring Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, as well as directed by Coralie Fargiat, who is definitely going to be up for Best Director, I think, for the Oscars, which is insane that a horror movie has been making the waves that this film is. But when you see it, you'll understand that. I was sitting next to some people that I didn't know, specifically one guy. He has the account The Film Memes on Instagram. If you don't follow that account, definitely go follow it because he's hilarious. But after watching The Substance, him and I walked out in the hall, I started writing my review kind of on my phone, and he walked up and he was like, hey man, you were sitting next to me, that movie, right? And I was like, yeah man, that movie. What the hell? The Substance is one of the craziest freaking films that you'll ever see. It's this burst of energy. It is so hardcore. It is so in your face. There's so much going on, so many colors, so much blood, so much action, but it's also such an insane premise that you're just forced to be there and forced to go there, and it just gets crazier and crazier as this roller coaster keeps riding along until this triumphant ending that is one of the wildest, most disgusting, just craziest thing I've ever seen. And so, yeah, man, if you've seen The Substance, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen The Substance, I highly encourage you, because I believe this is the everything everywhere of this awards season. This is going to be that film that people are like, what the hell was that? The Substance? Did you watch that? We should watch that. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that maybe they can handle some horror, and I hope that pushes people in the direction of horror films, because it's a very beautiful community. It's a very, very beautiful genre filled with amazing performances, and I hope that Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, I hope they get all of the praise that they deserve. But moving on to the top 3. My number 3 is a film that maybe some people can't quite understand, but again, I'm on that rewatchable vibe. I'm on that film that really just made me feel something. And this is a film directed by Osgood Perkins. It's called Longlegs. This is starring Micah Monroe, Nicolas Cage, and it was so grungy, it was so cool, and it was such an event. I'd really been looking forward to Longlegs because it was being touted as the scariest movie of the year. And now I did walk out going, that was not the scariest movie of the year, but I also was like, that was one of my favorite films that I've ever seen. I think that what Nicolas Cage does here is already like criminally underrated. Yeah, Nicolas Cage is always doing this shit, and so it can just be one of those things that's swept under the rug, and it's like, oh yeah, just another cool performance by Nicolas Cage. But the character of Longlegs is so wild, wacky, and goofy that I feel like this movie is almost misunderstood for what it's really going for, the tone that it's really going for, because at the end of the day, there are very scary moments in it, but it's also just really funny. My wife and I have rewatched this a few times now, and we find ourselves just hysterically laughing because of the performance of Nicolas Cage. And it's not funny in a stupid way, it's funny in a tactful and tasteful way. But there is a mirror that you're looking through, and on the other side of it is Micah Monroe, who's living this Silence of the Lambs type ordeal. And she gives a great performance, as always, but just the pure terror she has to endure, it kind of shakes you to your core, but at the same time, you're laughing at how weird and strange this guy is. I love the first 2 acts of it, and I especially love the third act, and I think the third act of it is a little bit make and break for some people, but Longlegs, you'll always have my heart. My wife and I dressed up as the characters for Halloween, and it was an absolute blast. But yeah, this is just a special movie in my heart, and if you haven't seen Longlegs, maybe you won't see it as a bit funny, kind of like I do, but it definitely is scary, and it's worth the watch if you're into horror films. But as for my top 2 films, these are 2 films that I had a really hard time deciding between, but at the end of the day, my number 2 ended up being Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I am recording this as of December 23rd, and editing takes a minute, so I don't know exactly when I'm going to get this out, but at the moment, Nosferatu still hasn't been widely released, and I'm so insanely excited for people to see this film. It's a generational masterpiece. It takes a silent film, 1922 silent film, and obviously there are other iterations that have come out and other adaptations, but it takes this silent film, it adds a very beautiful, haunting score to it, and then it just expands it. It brings it to modern day and fleshes out everything that you could ever want to see. Robert Eggers is a visual genius. The cast is absolutely outstanding. Everybody gives like 110%, and Bill Skarsgård is absolutely haunting. It's a film that's going to live with you. It's a film that you're going to want to watch again and again because the production design, the sets, the costumes, everything is so real, it's so beautiful that you don't have to worry about constantly being slapped in the face with like massive CGI shots and things that look fake and fuzzy. Like, you truly feel like you're living in this time period. You truly feel like you're going to Transylvania, and that's what I want out of a film. I felt haunted. I felt like this count, if you know the story, was beckoning to our theater. You know what I mean? I was so engaged, and it takes a lot for a movie to immerse you that much in its atmosphere, and so props to Robert Eggers and everything that he created for this. Again, I'm so excited for people to freaking get out and watch this thing. It might not be for everybody, but I do feel like there are going to be a lot of people that are just going to run away with this one, and it's going to like become their personality for months. And so that's what basically happened to me. So if you're going to see Nosferatu this holiday season, I'm excited for you. But on to my number 1. And this is a film that came out earlier in the year, and so I feel like the hype for it has kind of gone down, but I don't want to let it go down anymore, because as soon after I saw it, I said, There's not going to be a better film than that this year. And truly there wasn't. Like, nothing could touch it. Nosferatu was damn close, but nothing could touch this because it has a director like Denis Villeneuve. This is Dune Part 2. One of the coolest theater experiences that I've had in years. I went to this movie several times in theaters, and it just got better every single time. And that's because Denis Villeneuve. That's also because it's a phenomenal story. This is one of those all-time greats, and what Frank Herbert put on this page, it's something special. I think a lot of people know that. If you've never read Dune, you definitely should and check it out. But the way that Denis Villeneuve was able to adapt this and create this world, create Arrakis, it was so pure and it was so beautiful. It's also coupled with Greg Fraser, the cinematographer. He was also the cinematographer on The Batman. He has an eye for this, and when you get him and Denis together, the screenplay was phenomenal, the pacing was perfect, and now having watched Dune Part 1 and Part 2 back to back, it's one of the best things to come out, I think, since the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It feels like a Peter Jackson type moment, and as I've gotten older, I've started to think like, oh, maybe that stuff just doesn't really happen anymore. We were so lucky to grow up in the time that we were, at least, somebody my age, like getting to watch The Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King in theaters. It was such a special experience. But as we've gotten older, things have just changed a bit. We've had Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, and the landscape has changed. There's been event-type films, but the fact that Denis Villeneuve put sci-fi on freaking blast and said, this is what you're getting. You're going to love it because I'm making it in the best way possible. I know that you guys are going to love it. And so here it is. And that's exactly what they did. He made a masterpiece out of Dune Part 1 and Part 2. And you have this extremely young and talented actor, Timothée Chalamet, playing Paul Atreides. You also have Austin Butler. You have Florence Pugh. You have Zendaya. A whole landscape of all of these rising stars. And it felt like a moment. It felt like a moment in time where just the film collective, as well as just like wider audiences, everybody kind of agreed that this was something special. You didn't hear many people being like, I just didn't like Dune Part 2. It wasn't for me. It's just like, how can you not love this movie? It's so good. But yeah, guys, really special year for film. I think if I, thought about it in the beginning of 2024, this list would look nothing like I could have anticipated. Such a wide range and variety of genres. And that is the beauty of film and filmmaking. I absolutely love being a part of it as the viewer and as a critic. It's a phenomenal space to be in. And 2025, holy shit, the slate looks insane. And so I can't wait to head that direction. And sadly, we're going to close the book on this. But as always, I would love to hear all of your guys' thoughts on all of these films. What do you think about my top 10 list? And also, what is your top 10 list? I'd love to hear it. Put it down below. Also, make sure to leave a like on this video. Hit subscribe if you're new here, and keep up the good vibes, my friends. Happy holidays. Peace.